What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How to Lead podcast, a conversation designed to help you develop yourself and those around you. My name's Adam, joined by Clay. Clay, last night we had some family over, 2 dogs. One of them gets the slightest bit scared and just starts to lose their mind, and the other one, it's like sympathy barking, and it is ear-piercing volume. Okay. So of course we get up and we give them attention because we want peace and quiet back in the house. And so I start with that because today we're going to talk about how you can get noticed without acting like these 2 really incredibly annoying dogs that were at my house last night.
I am in Atlanta, Georgia. And so in Atlanta, Adam, it is not uncommon for a human to bark because of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh, that's right.
That is very normal.
But it's like a deep, visceral kind of growl. Like these are like silly designer dog like yelps, super loud.
Well, that's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Just to have in jest with any Georgia fans that I am in contact with. I usually give them Georgia Bulldogs. I usually give them just a real Chihuahua like bark because they like the deep booming bark. But I like your lead in because some of the best leaders I know are quietly doing great work.
Yep.
And unfortunately wondering why no one sees it, right?
That's right.
This is such a common conversation that I'm sure you have with some of the clients that you work with. I have this conversation all the time where they say, hey,
I lived it for so long too.
This was you?
Right? Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's just like, I remember thinking, I told myself this story years ago that like Apple did no marketing. All they did was create insanely great products and everybody found them.
Yeah.
While at the same time, they had some of the most memorable marketing commercials and marketing programs ever. But there was some story out there that I told myself that like, just be awesome and people will find you. Kind of the Field of Dreams approach, if you will.
Right.
Just be
if
great
you just
and people are
build
going
it
to
in
find
a really
you.
great way. They're going to find the product, right?
And it never really seemed to work.
Yeah, I just feel like this is a very common conversation to have. And so if you're in an organization where you feel like I'm over here doing great work and no one notices it, what do I need to become someone that I'm not just to get promoted or noticed, or do I need to become someone that I don't even like myself just so that I won't get overlooked anymore? I think this is a really common feeling that people have. And so if that's you, if you're sitting here going, I feel like I'm doing great work, but I don't know, do I need to hire a marketing team just for myself?
Yeah.
Do I need to figure out ways to make myself more public? Do I need to be more vocal? Do I need to change my personality? The answer is, it is possible. It's possible for you to, how did Cal Newport say it? It's possible for you to be so good that they can't ignore you, right?
Yeah. It is. And we're going to have to do some things to stand out in a very noisy world. So, there's just a lot of noise. Our bosses are all busy. Our organizations have a ton going on. And so, very similar to what we said in the last episode, you can't just sit around and wait a lot of times. I mean, again, leadership involves taking initiative to just take that step forward. And sometimes we got to, if we're doing great work, then it is not being prideful to talk about it and to try to bring some attention to it and go, hey, I think some great things are going on here. So let's talk about like some of the trap I think that goes with this too, because I think this is important that we poke on this a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of people, like I was convinced years ago that my approach of not trying to bring fanfare, or that somehow I was better, more mature. I was on staff at a church at a time, so more spiritual, some of that came in. And I think looking back on it now, although my heart was in the right place, I don't know if I was completely right. So push back a little bit on some of this idea.
Let me encourage you. It's not about just being louder. That I think what you are saying, that there is a lot of truth there, that there is something powerful about being excellent. I like the term, I use this in How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, but the term of creating an oasis of excellence.
Yeah.
So you might not be in charge of all you want to be in charge of, but what you are most in charge of is what's most important. And if you can create an oasis of excellence right where you are, yes, that will be part of the value, but there is a way to be excellent and visible in the right way. That a lot of times you asked to define the trap. Here's the two challenges that I often feel with myself and with other leaders. I think we often mistake humility for invisibility, right?
That's good.
That humility feels like, well, I'm just, I don't want to bring any attention to myself. I'm just in the back of the room, just out here doing some really great work and never going to talk to anybody about it. A little bit like, the way Jesus talked about giving. He was like, when you're giving, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, because if you do, that's going to be your reward. And I think sometimes we take that same principle when it comes to the good work that I'm doing. I don't need to go around taking credit for work I didn't do. And I don't need to go on reminding everyone about all the work that I'm doing, but there are times when I can communicate well about the work that I am doing. And we'll talk about how to do that, ways to do that in the right way. But I think we got to get over that feeling that invisibility is just me being humble. The second one is, I think sometimes we mistake volume for value, right?
Yes.
And these are the people, truthfully, Adam, there are plenty of seasons in my life where I am this person. I had... When I went to my freshman orientation at Georgia Tech, a good friend of mine, Sean Donahue, this is when we were in college, and so everybody called Sean Donahue Donnie. Part of the reason because The Big Lebowski had released at that point as well. And Donnie's such a great character in The Big Lebowski. Yeah. But Sean told me years later, he said, when I first saw you at our freshman orientation, I hated you.
Because, what a visceral reaction.
Well, but we were good friends at this point. And he was right. When I think back on that person that I was, he said I didn't know that you had just come from Navy ROTC boot camp week, which I was on a Navy ROTC scholarship for like a minute. And I had to shave my head. So he's like, you had a shaved head, and then you had this camouflage hat that you wore backwards, and we're in the orientation with hundreds of students, and you're standing up, like pointing at people and talking to people, standing up in front of everyone. And I had a lot of volume. I do have a lot of volume. I had a lot of volume then. I think sometimes it's that person in the organization that sticks out, right? The one that's always cracking the loud joke when the whole team's there. It's the one that's always making a lot of noise at the happy hour. It's the one that has the big personality, tells the big story. And if that's not you, you're often thinking, well, just because you're the loudest voice in the room, it doesn't mean you're the most valuable, right? But I think there's a way that we can mistake volume for value, but there's also a way that we can learn, okay, but it's also not about being quiet either, that there is a way to be loud enough, and there is a way to turn up some of the volume, particularly when there is value.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about maybe just some of the reasons we may feel unnoticed, because there's a couple of them here that we can think of, and then I think it'd be good for us just to get into some solutions, like ways that we can increase the volume without feeling like we're selling out, or sucking up. So, but let's first talk about like some reasons we may feel unnoticed and what to do about it. What comes to mind there?
Yeah, I brought 3 of them. I'd say the first one is that you are great, but you're only in the background, and maybe that could be because of your personality, or that could be because of the role that you're in. I think that the danger, Adam, is that sometimes we think we're great when the work we're doing is not actually great.
That's right.
So there is something to making sure that your work is excellent, making sure that your work is done as great as possible, because it is all of our biases, right? I mean, on one hand, we're our own worst critic, but on the other hand, we're our biggest fan as well, right? That we naturally have that confirmation bias to tell ourselves that we're doing the best kind of work. But you might be executing flawlessly and no one sees the strategy or leadership behind it. I think learning how to narrate your thinking. We've learned this from the phone. My wife and I try to narrate our phone use, because when you're with a person and all you see is them doing this, I don't know if you're playing Candy Crush or if you're responding to a work email, right?
Yeah.
But they look the same from my side. And so learning how to narrate, hey, I got to respond to this email. It's a work email. And then as soon as I'm done, I'm going to put it down. I think learning how to do that, learning how to narrate what you're thinking, narrate the why behind the how or behind the what when appropriate, I think is a great way to take what's great and move it into the foreground, right?
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence isn't about just knowing what to say. It's about knowing when to say it.
I like that. So, and maybe some of my friends that are in, candidly, more background roles, more supportive roles, administrative roles. So I'm thinking about my friends in accounting, my friends in IT.
Yep.
Friends that would maybe
video production.
Video production.
You're not the one on the front of the camera. You're the one in the background editing or shooting.
That's right. Yeah. So customer support, customer success, things like that. That's what they may feel. And so just the opportunities to talk about it, that can go a long way. So, that's a good one. Let's go on to
another one. You're waiting for recognition instead of building relationships, right?
Say that one again, because I think that one is money.
Yeah, you're waiting for recognition. You're waiting for the boss, or you're waiting for HR, or you're waiting for the sales team to say, oh my gosh, we're going to give you an award for all that you're doing, right? Instead of building relationships that most, unfortunately, it is about who you know, right? It's not just about who's doing the best work. Our kids go to a school where every quarter they do an award ceremony. And they try to give awards out based on the virtues of the school. The first time we saw it, we were stunned. We thought this is the greatest thing because, people repeat what you reward. We know this from work context, but it's funny how my wife and I, we've got 5 kids. We've got a couple of kids that win awards. I mean, 1 out of 3 ceremonies, they're winning an award. And then we've got some kids that have never won an award. And it's a hard conversation because I want to encourage the ones that haven't won awards that they have gifts in other ways, but I also want them to stop sitting back waiting to be recognized and go build a relationship with the teacher. Yes. Because I guarantee you that teacher is probably giving an award to the student that he or she feels like she knows best or he knows best, and not for the wrong reasons. Because they talk. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think that is true at work.
That's good. Yeah. For sure. Okay, last one, and then we'll jump into what can we do about it.
Yeah, I would say you're excellent, but maybe in the wrong arena. So this might have to do with, this might be one of those situations where you realize you're not a good fit at the place you work, perhaps. Yeah. Or maybe that you're not wrongfully employed, but maybe you're just misemployed, right? We've done some episodes on how do you know when the job that you're in the wrong job. I think there are plenty of people that you're excellent in the work you do, but it's just the wrong arena, or you're in an organization that doesn't salute that or doesn't recognize that kind of work. But I think, again, we talked about the working genius before. This is where the working genius can really help. You understand what your strengths are, what your gifts are, what the things you love to do, and does it align with the company? Does it align with the kind of work that you're doing?
That's good. Okay. Let's get into ways that we can do this without selling out. So again, it's great to be good so that people notice you. Your competence has got to speak for itself. Your final work product's got to be solid. There are times where if you build it, they will come type of idea. But other times, the other 99% of the time, we're going to have to learn how to open our mouth and in a skillful way, bring some attention to ourselves without shaving our head and putting on a hat backwards
camouflage hat and standing up in the middle of the big crowd that's all seated.
That's right.
Other ways.
Yeah. So, okay, let me just call these out because we've got some notes that we've done here on this. So the first one you have is this idea of mastering follow-up.
Yeah.
That's intriguing. Say more about that because I think I know what you mean there, but explain it.
Well, I'm sure you've worked with people like this, Tarnow, people that are just really good at, for one, it's great because they're summarizing the meeting. Now it's a little tricky because AI does this so well for us in most meetings, but I would say learning how to master the follow-up of the meeting. After the meeting, remind people, here were the wins. Even if it includes, obviously don't just share yours, but it's sharing a brief summary of not only what you did, but why it matters. You're not bragging, you're bringing clarity, right? And so learning how to do that in a tactful, appropriate way, again, where you're altruistic, you're not just celebrating your own stuff, but you're also celebrating the follow-up or the wins or here are the big points that came out of that meeting for other people as well.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So following up, that definitely, with the use of the tools can be helpful. But my guess is like the number of organizations that are using that tool in their meetings is still probably like we still have early adopters. So still you just taking good notes and following up afterwards and reminding people what they said they were going to do. That can be really helpful.
Obviously it is reminding people like, okay, here were the to-dos. Here's who said they were going to do what, but it's more than that. It's remember, here were some of the big ideas that came out of that. Here's some of I've been thinking more about it. I think it's the touch point as much of anything. Yeah. It's showing that, hey, I didn't just let that meeting die. But again, I think it's a way to get noticed. And there might be somebody whose function on the team is to do this. And if so, great. You don't want to steal their thunder. But if there's not, I think it's just a way for you to be engaged in the work that you all are doing. To just go, hey, that meeting wasn't wasted. That here's what came out of that. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's where we're headed with it. It's learning how to do that with your colleagues is great. Learning how to do that with your boss is essential.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, I like this next one, number 2 here, of just, again, things that we can do because it sounds a little counterintuitive. So be a problem finder, not just a problem solver, which is we give a lot of advice. Don't just bring problems to the table. You also got to bring solutions. But there's a little nuance here, and I like the nuance that you're thinking of here. So explain this one.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That advice at this point is probably a little cliche, right? Don't just bring up problems, bring solutions. Although the image, Adam, that you've given this, I use it all the time when you feel like you're walking into your boss's office, taking a trash can and dumping it onto their desk, right? That's the way it feels when you're just bringing problems. But I would say there is something important about learning how to see problems, how to raise the importance of the problem. And then obviously, yes, bringing solutions to the problem. But we've said this before, the greatest leaders are the ones that know how to identify, that know how to handle change, that know how to lead people to the change or through the change. But also the next level is the greatest leaders are the ones that know how to see what needs to change.
Yep.
That's about that's about being a problem finder and not just a problem solver. And if you do this on a team, you will become very visible because you won't just, obviously you got to pay attention to becoming cynical, becoming somebody who's seen as negative.
Right.
But if you're doing it in a way that I'm just raising great questions and I'm not just here to execute the orders of the people above, but I'm really, it's engaging with your mind, right? I'm engaged in the work that we're doing and I'm becoming a problem finder, not just a problem solver.
I think I'm going to give you the credit, Clay. There's a difference between critical thinking or thinking critically and being critical. So we're not saying be a critic, just go around and find a bunch of things that are wrong, like that, what is it, Progressive commercial with the ants, right? Expired. It's not just pointing out all that stuff, but it is helpful to go, hey, I think this thing may be broken over here. Again, that other episode when I talked about my friend that saw something at work that wasn't working well, it wasn't part of his job description, and then he used some of his own time to solve it. That's becoming a problem finder, and he was a solver, but he first had to sniff that out and go, hey, I'm thinking critically about what we're doing here, and I'm seeing a way that we can make things more efficient. That stuff usually stands out and gets noticed. It really does. Now, I want to go ahead and do this last one because I really see how all these fit together, and I want to talk about a couple of examples when we're done here. So you talked about master the art of follow-up and just the way we're paying attention in meetings, become the problem finder, not just the solver. And then the third way that we do this is offering upward help, right? Offering upward help. So talk about that one.
Well, it's more than just going to your boss and saying, hey, is there anything I can do today? Is there anything?
That's right.
Have you ever had anybody on your team that did that?
I had
one particular employee. I remember this so clearly. And every one-on-one, he would say, hey, is there anything else I can do for you? And I remember after like 6 months of him doing this, of being like, you could keep doing your job better and better. That would be doing me a huge favor, right?
That's right.
But no, there's nothing on my plate that you can do more than the job that is so important that we've hired you to do. And so what I'm not saying is be constantly in a place where your just hands are open asking your boss if you can do anything for him or her. No. The best employees are usually the ones that are busiest. They're usually the ones that are solving things. But I do think when we're able to go, I've noticed an issue, I've noticed a problem, would you be open to me bringing a solution to that? Would you be open to me taking a stab at it? I tell the story all the time, Adam, about this closet that was so messy. I worked for a while in student ministry. And so in student ministry, one of the big parts is the skits that you do, right? I mean, we were always dressing up as something, wearing something, game, things that you needed for games. And so we had this prop closet that during the school year, it would just get messier and messier, disorganized. And then when interns would come in for the summer, their first thing we would have them do is clean out the prop closet. Some people would call that hazing. I call it team building, right? There's a very thin line between hazing and team building.
Very fun.
But it was a great exercise for them because they were usually 3 or 4 summer interns and they needed to get to know each other. And this was a great way for them to work together. This one particular year, this girl had gotten done with school a little earlier than the others, and she had started her internship about a week before, and I walked past the closet that was going to be their first big project, and she's already in there cleaning it out. She had heard. And I was kind of stunned. I was like, whoa, what in the world? I was like, did something go wrong? Did someone make you do this? Did you say something wrong to someone? Right, I'm kidding. And she said, no, I knew this was going to be what we were doing, and so I just decided to go ahead and clean it out. That is an example of someone who was anticipating, going, hey, I know this is a problem. Is anybody going to work on this? No? Well, then I'd love to take a stab at it. That is in a real metaphorical kind of way, I think every one of us ought to identify the closet that needs to be cleaned out. What's the place that it just isn't getting fixed? It keeps breaking. There's no solution to it. It keeps coming up and keeps getting overlooked. Maybe that's an area where you can offer some help offer some upward help to say, hey, would you mind if I take a stab at that problem?
Okay, let's tie these all together, because I think if you're sitting there as a teammate, as a leader, you're in some meeting and you hear someone. So this is like mastering the follow-up, become the problem finder, and offering help. There's some keyword indicators that you have prop closets in your organization somewhere.
Definitely.
And so you need to start listening for the word. You know what we should do? Yes. You know what ought to happen? You know what's just what's driving me crazy right now? Yeah. Like when people on a team start to throw these things out there, that is the clue of them going, there's a prop closet that is an absolute mess, and I wish someone would take the time to do it. So that's you following up going, ooh, keyword indicator, there was just a problem. Now, if you go home and start to think about it, and then you can initiate a conversation of, hey, I know we said this the other day. I got an idea, and I'm willing to do something about it. I'm telling you, that's the spotlight. And I've seen that work. My buddy John McGee does that. My friend Caitlin Van Wagner does that. They are not what you were describing your freshman year at Georgia Tech, but they were that, right? Like everybody knows what they're doing in the organization, and they do it in such a thoughtful, mature, dare I say humble kind of way. And it's just they're listening for things, they're thinking about it, and they're bringing solutions in there, and they're saying, I think I'm going to solve it too. Because a lot of times those prop closets, some leaders are sitting there and they don't even have one idea of how to solve that problem in their organization. And so if you just think about it for a little bit and go, what if we tried this? That helps. You and I, before we hit record, what I thought of with that as we were going over this outline was the fastest way for me to be loyal towards you and to think highly of you is for you to care about my kids. Like I'm saying that literally. So because if you care about something that I care about, then you have my loyalty forever. And now if we take that principle and we apply it to work, if you care about something that another leader or another team cares about and you go help them try to solve it, they're loyal.
Loyal for life.
They are loyal, and that is the spotlight on you. And now everybody's going to recognize what you're doing and you become indispensable.
Now, you can do it with motives that is all about yourself, right?
Yep.
Or you can do it with a motive of, I'm really just here to help. And if you do it with that motive, I think you'll find out that it's the best thing you can do to lead with some volume, right?
Yep.
Leadership isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the most intentional. You don't have to be louder. Just potentially you could be clearer, bolder, and maybe just more consistent in the way that you're working. And all of a sudden, people will start noticing.
They will. And you don't have to shave your head, and you don't need the backwards hat.
That's right.
There it is.
A backwards camo hat. What kind of idiot would wear that?
First time I saw you, I did not like you. That is a great way to start a friendship. So, okay, Clay. As always, great to be with you.
Thanks, Adam.
Well, that's all we got for today's episode of the How to Lead podcast. You can always reach out to us via email. We can be reached at info@howtolead.work. That's info@howtolead.work. Every episode is mixed and edited by the team over at Sound of a Rose. You can learn more about them at soundofarose.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.